Good evening. The meeting of the Skokie Village Board will come to order. I have a short preface. It's the post-COVID preface. With Skokie and the entire state of Illinois now in phase 5 of the Restore Illinois plan and the lifting of restrictions and in-person gatherings, the Skokie Village Board meetings are in person in the council chambers at Skokie Village Hall. Our meetings begin at 8 p.m. and they will continue to be broadcast live on the village's YouTube channel, as well as on Skokie Vision cable television channels 17 Comcast and 25 RCN. Meetings are also rebroadcast on the cable channels in the weeks following each of the meetings. The videos are archived as well on the village's YouTube channel. In keeping with guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and the Illinois Department of Public Health, members of the public who wish to attend the meeting should be prepared to practice social distancing, and masks should be worn by any individuals who are not fully vaccinated. Public comments may still be submitted to publiccomment@skokie.org. Comments received prior to the meeting or during the meeting will be provided to the village board but will not be read aloud. Public comments also can be mailed or hand-delivered to Skokie Village Hall here at 5127 Oakton, attention Village Manager's Office, or placed in the exterior drop box on the west side of Skokie Village Hall. Each village board meeting agenda includes time for public comments, and any individual wishing to speak on any issue will be allocated 3 minutes to address the village board. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the village clerk, Pramod Shah, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The meeting will come to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Sutker,
Here.
Trustee Robinson,
Here.
Trustee Kuhn,
Here.
Trustee Johnson,
Here.
Trustee Pure Slovin,
Here.
Trustee Klein,
Here.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Here we have a quorum. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. A motion is in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Sutker. Is there anything on the consent agenda anybody would like to have removed? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Aye.
Trustee Pure Slovin,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes. With the unanimous consent of the board, I am going to take up the Plan Commission case out of order. It's Plan Commission case 2021-18P. Chairman Paul Luke with Matt Brandmeier will do the honors. Mr.
Good
Chairman.
evening, Mayor and members of the board. Tonight I have case 2021-18P, a street vacation. At the June 3rd meeting of the Plan Commission, we reviewed the request of Haven Properties LLC for the vacation of an alley between 8057 Niles Center Road and 8052 Elmwood Avenue in the CX Core Mixed-Use District. The alley is wholly surrounded by private property and is a residual piece of a right-of-way from a previous alley vacation. There was only one question from the Commission regarding the current use of the alley, which is paved and looks like a driveway to the funeral home's parking lot. It is used for funeral home vehicles and the village's garbage and recycling trucks for pickup. The petitioner has added had added to the village standard easement language on the plat of vacation and provided attachments satisfying some of the conditions that were recommended by the commission. Plan Commission vote of 6 ayes, no nays, and 1 member absent, and 2 vacancies, that the petitioner's request be granted.
Okay. And I might point out that John Haben is with us this evening. If anybody has any questions, a motion on the alley vacation, 8057 now Center Road and 8052 Elmwood Avenue, Plan Commission Case 2021-18P would be in order. Trustee Sucker, seconded by Trustee Pure Slovan. Are there any comments or any questions? Oh, okay. Got to be careful. I see a hand moving, I'm going to call on you. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Aye.
Trustee Pure Slovan,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion
That
passes.
concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before turning to the much-anticipated report on use of force, I would like to go over a couple of items for everyone's clarification. First, I wish to express our gratitude and thanks to the members of the Skokie Public Safety Commission, the representatives of the Human Relations Commission, the many residents and organizations, and the Skokie Police Department that participated in the public deliberations. Few municipalities have created such an open and welcoming process. These deliberations took hours and hours of time, and not just a little patience by everyone involved. Nevertheless, the end product that is before us this evening justifies the means in this instance. Most municipalities decided to wait and see what the Illinois General Assembly would do, rather than hold their own individual local hearings. The state legislature did its job, and we commend them on it. We supported that legislation, and we continue to support it, including the recently passed trailer bill. In fact, some of the recommendations we'll consider this evening are contained in the legislature's Safety Act. I'll leave it there for the moment. Second, a little bit about procedure. The commission will deliver its report to the board. Members of the commission will explain their recommendations. Afterward, I'll request a motion and a second, and then I'll recognize members of the Board of Trustees for their comments and questions. What I'll do is I'll start with Trustee Sutker, and we'll go around in order. All of the trustees will then ask their questions or make their comments. After the board, I'll ask for comments from the public. Each person will be allotted 3 minutes. The report and deliberations have generated significant public interest. The first person speaking should have no more time than the last person speaking, and vice versa. After the public has shared its input, I'll ask for final comments from the board, after which we will then take a vote on the motion. Thank you, and it now gives me pleasure to introduce Ann Tennis, who will help guide us through this evening. And I didn't mention Ann by name because I knew I would be introducing her. But I do want to take a moment and thank Ann for all of the work that she did. She helped guide the meetings, and it was a lengthy public hearing process, and I did want to recognize her and thank her for that, and thank her for the job I know she's going to do this evening.
You're
And
wel-
it's
you're
all
welcome,
yours.
and it's been my pleasure.
Pleased to be here this evening. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank the members of the community who are here, and specifically the members of the Public Safety and Human Relations Commissioners who have worked so hard on this project, and a 10-month effort that has led to the presentation that you will hear this evening. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the Public Safety Commission Chairman, Paul Patalis.
Thank you, Ann. Mayor, trustees, council, Mr. Clerk, Mr. Manager, I'm so glad to see you all in place tonight. I have no idea. I really missed watching you on TV. It was like watching Hollywood Squares. And it didn't. It's been a long year, especially since we've been holding virtual meetings to have these little mini hearings. So it's been a little more challenging. And so I have a list of thank yous along that may echo some of the thank yous that the mayor has stated. First, thanks to former trustees Randy Roberts and Ilona Olerch they were there at the beginning and kind of set us on the pathway. Certainly thanks to trustee Edie Sutker, who stuck it out through the end. And we certainly thank you. We also thank the members of the Human Relations Commission who partnered with us on this. If they're here, they can wave their hand or stand up, whatever they choose. Alex Chaparro, Rabbi Amy Memis Fuller. Oh, you lefty. Yeah. Maria Monastero Bueno, Karen Lee Sherman, and James Specker. Anybody here? No. Okay. Oh, hi. I also want to thank the following groups for participating. There's a short list. The Assyrian National Council of Illinois, Insight Church, Laurel Park Action Network, the Muslim Community Center, the NAACP Evanston North Shore Branch, Niles Township Clergy Forum, Niles Township High Schools North and West, the Student Government, Niles Township Schools English Language Learners Parent Center, Niles Township ELL Parent Care Center, Seed Alumni, Skokie School District 65, 68, 69, 72, 73, and 73 and a half, parent-teacher organizations, and Skokie United. Thanks to the members of the subcommittee who are here going to make the presentation tonight, who actually produced the first draft and helped us through and got it, and finally edited the final copy. Alicia Case, Cornell Collins, who cannot be here this evening, Mark Penning, Vice Chairman of the Commission, Dennis Rizzo, and Karen Lease Sherman. I also want to thank Skokie police officers. We did have one meeting where Skokie police officers came and gave us their point of view, which was very informative. Mike Harnett, Robert Olkowski, Damon Nikopopoulos, and Mark Clanchetti. My special thanks to Chief Baker, who not only participated but gave us his advice and his support throughout the entire process and all the information we needed. But most of all, special thanks and my personal gratitude to the person who guided our force, brought this entire project to its conclusion. Semi-conclusion, I suspect there'll be more coming. Yeah. Her unflagging enthusiasm and dedication enabled us to accomplish the task. We thank Ann Tennis most sincerely. This report is neither accusatory nor punitive, but rather supportive and elevating. We believe it speaks for itself. Skokie is blessed with a highly trained and well-recognized police force. However, it is not possible to train everyone for every possible situation. Experience does play a large role in resolving interactions between police officers and the public. But no matter the level of training and years of experience, the fact remains that no two situations are ever alike. The Commission thus encourages Skokie's outstanding police department to seek greater levels of excellence in their policing by targeting their training in specific areas of police work, such as use of force. And now I'm going to ask Mark Penning, our Vice Chair, to come and start us off. It's all yours.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Mayor, trustees, thank you for having us tonight. We appreciate it. So there are 3 sections to our report: use of force recommendations, recommendations for training, and recommendations for trust and community engagement. This project began in the fall of 2020, subsequent to Mayor Van Duzen's taking the Obama Foundation's Reimagining Policing pledge that committed the village to 4 specific actions to examine public safety policies through an equity lens. We'll start out with the review, your police use of force policies. Second, engage your communities by including a diverse range of input, experiences, and stories in your review. The third, report the findings of your review to your community and seek feedback. Lastly, reform your community's police use of force policies. Mayor Van Duzen's charged the Public Safety Commission with conducting a community review of the Skokie Police Department use of force policy. The Public Safety Commission recognized that the Skokie Police Department undergoes regular policy and procedure reviews through the professional accreditation process that began in 1998 and continues to present, and affirmed that the Skokie Police Department use of force policy is reviewed annually. Further, in June 2018, the Skokie Police Department adopted the 10 Shared Principles resolution developed in concert with and between the NAACP and the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police to bridge the gap between the police and the community. An excerpt of these, which include the following: we value the life of every person and consider the life to be the highest of value. All persons should be treated with dignity and respect. This is another foundational value. We reject discrimination towards any person that is based on race, ethnicity, religion, color, nationality, immigrant status, sexual orientation, gender, disability, and familial status. The Public Safety Commission's invited members of the village's Human Relations Commission to join us in the community review process, and also invited representatives from the 16 groups that Paul Patalis just mentioned and are shown on your screen. In October of 2020, all groups were given presentations about the Skokie Police Department use of force policy and crime prevention and community outreach initiatives. A project web page was launched with a repository of all the agendas, documents issued during the process, and links to the meeting videos. A series of listening, meetings, and discussions with community groups representatives were held from November 2020 through February 2021. In March of 2021, the Public Safety Commission held a listening meeting and discussion with the Skokie Police Department. In April of 2021, the Public Safety Commission reviewed what we had heard from the community over the past 6 months and identified major themes for the recommendation. A small group of commissioners volunteered to create an initial draft recommendation that was reviewed by the entire commission in May of this year. From May 21st through May 14th, the draft recommendation was posted on the village website for public review and comment. This was also publicized in both News Skokie and Skokie News, the village's electronic newsletter. The Public Safety Commission reviewed the total of 11 written comments on June 16th of this year and made several changes to the draft as a result. My fellow commissioners and I are pleased to represent the Public Safety Commission this evening to present the Commission's final recommendations to the Village Board. And with that, I will call Dennis Rizzo, fellow Public Safety Commissioner, to discuss the use of force recommendations section.
Thank you, Mark, and good evening. As you heard, the commission listened to a lot of input from the community and community groups, and we carefully considered all of that input when considering recommendations to the use of force policy. In particular, we looked at a report that was presented by Skokie United, and that report was based on the tenets of the 8 Can't Wait initiative or campaign. So what you'll see over the next couple of slides, moving vehicles to only when deadly use of force is warranted. Next is chokeholds and strangleholds. The commission agrees with the new State of Illinois Safety, Accountability, Fairness, and Equity Today Act, also referred to as SAFETY, that prohibits chokeholds and restraints above the shoulders unless use of deadly force is justified. Next is duty to intervene. The current rules and regulations contains a duty to intervene section, as is also required by the Safety Act. The commission believes that should be referenced in the Skokie Police Department use of force policy. Next is require comprehensive reporting. The commission recommends establishing a community review board that will be detailed later in this presentation. And the final recommendation also outlines 9 additional acknowledgments and recommendations regarding comprehensive reporting in the use of force policy. Next is require de-escalation. As will be outlined later in this presentation, the commission strongly supports the department's pilot co-responder program and Be the Difference initiative described later in this report that outlines the requirement for de-escalation while serving the community. The commission further recommends adding a preface to the use of force policy emphasizing de-escalation and supports the language suggested by or similar to the language suggested by Skokie United. And the remaining text on the screen there is just some of that sample language, so I won't necessarily go through that. But again, it's just emphasizing that de-escalation is critical and key. Next of use is the use of force continuum. The commission supports the department's continued review of appellate law and Supreme Court case decisions regarding use of force and what is not reasonable. The commission further supports continuation of the department's practice of presenting the results of this continuing review process to the department staff on a monthly basis, using outside legal counsel to present the information and to test department staff on their understanding of the information presented. And finally, we have exhaust alternatives before shooting. The commission supports and agrees with the standard of, when practical, exhausting all alternatives before shooting or otherwise using deadly force. The commission's expectation is that the recommendations in this report, when incorporated into the use of force policy, will achieve this outcome. And just a couple notes in conclusion to this section of the presentation. We do recognize, as the mayor mentioned, that the Safety Act may supersede items included in this section of the recommendation as the legislation is coming through. The commission also aspires to have the department considered, the Skokie Police Department, considered a model for equity, fairness, and accountability in adhering to best practices in law enforcement. And we pledge our resources to support, amplify the Skokie Police Department's efforts to attain this standard. And with that, I'll introduce Alicia Case.
Hello. I'd like to take a moment to thank the village board and the mayor for this opportunity to review the public use of force policy by the Skokie Police Department. This has been very meaningful, and while this is something that, this is a group project. I know everyone's been acknowledged before, but this is something where any one person in the commission might not agree with every single part of this recommendation, but it's something that we could all live with. So the recommendations for training. During the community review process, the Public Safety Commission heard repeated calls for additional training. The Commission strongly supports and recommends additional training for members of the Skokie Police Department. We recommend that the already robust training initiatives be enhanced as follows. With regards to bias-based policing, currently Skokie police officers review and sign off annually on a document regarding bias-based policing. The new state law requires implicit bias training for all police personnel within 3 years. That is to be repeated every 3 years. The Public Safety Commission recommends accelerating anti-bias training, which includes implicit bias training for all police personnel to take place within 12 months from now. Leadership have been asked to take additional training, and we would like to applaud the police's use of, they already make use of community speakers to invite representatives from various groups, including the National Alliance on Mental Illness, LGBTQ+ advocacy centers, and others to provide presentations and dialogue with police officers to increase understanding and enhance the Skokie Police Department's response practices. The Public Safety Commission recommends that all Skokie Police Department officers participate in crisis intervention training within 24 months by July 23rd, 2023. The state of Illinois approved crisis intervention training has limited availability and capacity, so we're asking you for help now, the board. We recommend that the board request that the Illinois Municipal League and Northwest Municipal Conference work with the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board to increase the availability and capacity of crisis intervention training opportunities. And now Karen is going to present recommendations for transparency and accountability.
So good evening, everybody, and thanks so much for having us here. Oh, wrong down. I'm so sorry. So sorry. All right. So the Public Safety Commission supports establishing a community review board to, number one, evaluate the Skokie Police Department use of force statistics and the findings from the use of force incidents that resulted in complaint or injury. It's also to ascertain if the use of force policy continues to meet the needs of the community, or if modifications to the policy are recommended to ensure its continued effectiveness. The Public Safety Commission recommends that, to the extent possible, the Community Review Board represent the demographics of the community in terms of race, ethnicity, income levels, age, gender, and experience. The Public Safety Commission requests that the mayor's office oversee the application process for individuals interested in serving on the Community Review Board. As part of the community review process, extensive data was developed regarding the use of force incidents in total and through an equity lens. The Public Safety Commission recommends that the Skokie Police Department update this data set annually and expand the analysis of use of force through an equity lens. The data set will be presented to the Public Safety Commission each year in January and posted on the Skokie Police Department's webpage. The Skokie Police Department and the Public Safety Commission web pages should continue to be updated regularly with all Skokie Police Department policies, procedures, and other applicable documents to increase transparency and enhance public trust in the Skokie Police Department. And that brings up Alicia again.
So the following is our recommendations for trust and community engagement. The Public Safety Commission recognizes and commends the Skokie Police Department's commitment to building and maintaining strong community ties and is committed to supporting and amplifying these initiatives. A partial list of which is listed here. There are more programs. People were really surprised at how many programs there were that the police do to reach out to the community. So Chat with the Chief, Coffee with the Cop, Triad, which is a community engagement policy that specifically engages with senior citizens, and the Police Explorers program, which specifically engages with younger people who might like to join the police someday. The Public Safety Commission supports additional recommendations to further its vision of people doing more for each other in the community. In the coming months, the Commission will revisit the Many Cultures, One Community, Keeping Skokie Safe initiative to ensure that the program continues to best reach the needs of the community. We request to analyze geographic locations of use of force incidents, looking for clusters and possible opportunities for improvements. We recommend to work with community groups, schools, and other organizations to identify neighborhood leaders who are not already involved in the neighborhood watch in the hopes that it would help the community members get to know their neighbors better and to improve neighborhood safety by that means. We hope to develop additional programs to inspire community members to help others and additional means to communicate with and mentoring vulnerable youth to show that the community cares. The Commission enthusiastically supports 2 new police department initiatives. These got a lot of public feedback that was very positive. The first was a co-responder pilot program to increase awareness and recognition of behavioral and/or mental health crisis incidents to produce the best possible interventions and outcomes. This program is responsive to the thoughts and aspirations expressed by members of the community groups participating in the use of force policy discussions. We recommend a thorough review of the pilot phase, after which I'm sure there will be enhancements that need to be incorporated for a long-term program continuation. The second initiative was the Be the Difference initiative. These are goals developed by the Skokie Police Department that centers on a commitment by all police personnel to focus on procedural justice, accountability, communication, and evolution towards continuous improvement. The Commission further requests that the Police Department continue its efforts to recruit a police force that includes more individuals of diverse backgrounds, working with the village's Human Resources Department on additional methods to ensure that a diverse pool of applicants apply for open positions. Mark?
Thank you. The Public Safety Commission appreciates being entrusted with conducting the 2021 review of the Skokie Police Department use of force policy and is grateful for the countless volunteer hours that have been contributed to the project by the Public Safety Commission, Human Relations Commission, community members at large, elected officials, and Skokie residents. The recommendations in this report are in no way meant to imply the Skokie Police Department personnel are deficient in their daily efforts to serve and protect the community. The Commission applauds the Skokie Police Department's commitment to reviewing its practices, enhancing training efforts, examining policies, and renewing its community engagement programs to further ensure that it serves and protects the community with the utmost safety, accountability, fairness, and equity. The Commission stands at the ready to support and assist the Skokie Police Department in these efforts and welcomes continued community involvement in the Public Safety Commission projects. And with that, Ann.
Thank you, Mark and Commissioners. Mayor, I just have a couple of more comments. I wanted to mention that Public Safety Commissioner Cornell Collins, who was part of the small working group that developed and refined the draft, he, as the chairman said, was unable to be here this evening because of a prior commitment, but he expresses his support for the recommendation. I'd also like to recognize at least two public safety commissioners who are here. Leslie Post-Weisinger, Linda Perlin is here, and I believe Rabbi Amy Memes-Foler, who is part of the Human Relations Commission, who participated in this project, also are here. I hope I haven't missed anyone who snuck in. With that, concludes the presentation.
Thank you. I would ask for a motion regarding the use of force recommendation report of the Skokie Public Safety Commission. Trustee Sutker?
I move to authorize Chief Brian Baker to implement the use of force policies within his jurisdiction as recommended by the Public Safety Commission with input from the Human Relations Commission and the residents of the Village of Skokie. Also, the Village Board will authorize the Corporation Council to draft and present to the board such ordinances as may be necessary to implement the use of force recommendations. Additionally, this motion directs the village manager and chief of police to report to the village board in 6 months of the progress of the implementation. Thank you.
A second to the motion would be in order. Motion is seconded by trustee Pure Slovan. We have a motion on the floor, and so what I will do is call out each trustee in order for any comments or questions they may have, and I will start with trustee Sutker.
Thank you, Mayor. I stand by the work of the Public Safety Commission. As liaison of the Public Safety Commission, I attended every meeting reviewing the use of force policies. I listened to every person who spoke, giving their own opinions. I read every comment. I think the commission did a good job of balancing all the thoughts and opinions of others. Some of the recommendations were not what I personally wanted, but I think all of the recommendations made sense given the input of others. Thank you so much to the staff and the residents of the village of Skokie who participated in this process.
Thank you. Trustee Robinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to express my gratitude as well to the commission and the citizens for your hard and diligent work on this process. I've been a part of so many other processes like this, and I understand the time and energy and research and review that it takes to really come up with, some ideas that are commendable and pretty practical. So I just want to thank the committee for that. I'm sure I'll have more questions as we go, but I just applaud the effort and just know that when people come together and they get the opportunity to engage in something like this, that there's a great deal of power in it. So I just wanted to thank the committee for that.
Trustee Kuhn.
I just want to echo the trustees and the mayor's sentiments in terms of understanding the amount of time, the level of engagement, the feedback that community members have come forward and shared their perspectives and on something that is very personal at times and very important for the well-being of the community in looking at public safety and making sure that this is a community that is safe and welcoming for all. So I support that. I do have a couple of open questions, and maybe it may be better to be defined once the public board, the community board is established. But just something I just want to put out there is, there's a lot of talk about what it means to look at from an equity lens. And so I just want to be sure that as we're going through this and defining that work, that we're all clear and understand what it means to look through an equity perspective and equity lens. And that is something that is a shared understanding, because I think language is very important. And unless we understand what the terminology and the language and that perspective is, we might not be talking about the same thing. I guess my other question out there is, it's very similarly when we talk about implicit bias training, what is currently available out there that would support the police department in getting implicit bias training, making sure that there's sort of an approved list or something that, what is it, doesn't meet our standards or our definition of saying this is what we want our police to be trained on when we talk about implicit bias. And so those are my comments to that. Thank you.
Trustee Johnson.
I know this is echoing what pretty much everyone has said, but I am so thankful to the commission for your work. I'm not sure it's been acknowledged sufficiently that you did this during a pandemic. The pandemic has been really hard on our systems of boards and commissions. we still have a number of commissions that have not met since early 2020, and yet, despite all of the difficulties, your commission has really thrived during this period. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned for our entire system of boards and commissions from your work. I'm feeling very grateful this evening for your work. I'm not sure I have any questions, but I have a couple comments. I want to say, I think one of the most important sentences in your entire report is not even in the recommendations. It's on the first page, where you just say that the commission is committed to continuing to explore ways to promote an equitable community in addressing systemic racism. Like, for me, as I'm entering this conversation, that feels as important, if not more, than the actual recommendations of this report, that this is an ongoing conversation. Something that's been really on my mind a lot in the past couple days, and especially as there have been a couple changes between the draft report and the final report, I loved your conversation at your last meeting about the composition of the Community Review Board. Y'all had like a very detailed hour-long conversation about what this board should look like. And your recommendations are pretty fantastic, in my opinion. You really oh, sorry, let me pull it up. I really appreciate that you're asking us to do everything we can to make sure that this review board is actually reflective of the community. You mentioned race, ethnicity, you mentioned income, age, gender, experience, and you also mentioned geography, which I think is really important. You talked about how to break this up so that we actually have folks from every corner of the community a part of this process. I think that's so important. Something that's really stuck with me is I think we can learn a lot from these recommendations. These are recommendations for transparency and accountability. I think there's a lot we can do to make our entire system of boards and commissions more transparent and more open and more equity-minded. And that's a larger conversation that I think I will be having with you all and staff in the weeks to come. I really hope that the creation of this community review board is, I hope it is a great opportunity for us to proactively look at our entire system of boards and commissions. There are many recommendations in this report that I think can and should be used more broadly than just an examination of this issue and Skokie PD. I'm very thankful for your work. I have a million other thoughts. I could talk for an hour, so I will stop. But thank you for everything you're doing.
Trustee Pierce-Slovan.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to repeat ad nausea everybody's accolades, but I do agree with everything that the trustees before me have said about the report. I'm forever grateful for the transparency of it, the work that everybody delved into. I think it's an extraordinary document, and it's an extraordinary step for the Skokie, and we should be very proud. I especially, in the report, though there's many parts of it that, of course, I support, but I especially support and was pleased to see that there is a community reviewed board process and that there will be applications for it. I think that just mirroring what Trustee Johnson just said does show that we are looking for diversity, that we're looking for inclusion, we're looking for diversity within the community. I think that's a very important process, and I don't believe that what you're trying or we are trying to achieve will happen if we don't have the right review process. I think that there's stopgaps to everything that we do, and it's wonderful to pass mandates, as the state does all the time, and then there's no follow-up to it. So I think that the review process is going to be actually one of the most important part of what's going to happen with this entire report. The other thing is to mirror what was said earlier is implicit bias training. I'm always concerned about that. There are many workshops out there. There are many places that say that they do implicit bias workshops, etc. We have to know that we're working with the right organizations or whoever say that they're professionals at it, not everybody is. I don't know how you vet that. I'm not giving you advice here, but I think that that is a concern that we have to take very, very, we should take cautiously, and that we should really know who the organizations are. I don't know on the state level if they have recommendations of implicit bias. I know in working with the State Board of Education, for example, they don't have resources, and it's become a big issue. I know that on a different professional level. So I think that that's something that we have to do cautiously and ensure that we are happy with the partners that we're choosing to work with. That's the only caution that I can think of. But again, I want to mirror everybody and applauding, especially as you said, during COVID, to achieve this. Skokie should be proud, and I hope that other communities take a lesson from us and the work that you've done here tonight. Thank you.
Trustee Klein.
I also concur with everything that was said with by the other trustees. The report is a thing of beauty. It's very well done. And one of the most impressive things to me is how 16 different groups got together and came up with this. And I congratulate you all, and I thank you all.
Thank you. And now I would like to invite anybody from the public who would like to share comments with us. Would like to remind you that each person has 3 minutes. I'm going to be somewhat strict on that because I like to make sure whoever speaks gets no more time than anybody else. I'm not doing it to be nasty or mean. Try and make sure everybody has an opportunity. Also, our custom in the past when somebody spoke was to ask for their name and their address. I'm not going to ask for your address. One of my colleagues suggested that we put that in abeyance, given the times we live in. People might not want to give their address. Rest assured, the only reason we wanted addresses was so we could get in touch with people if there was any follow-up that was needed. But I've taken to heart that advice. So, but if you would at least certainly give us your name. So whoever would like to speak, I see a couple people getting ready. If you come to the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Beth Demas, and I'm a member of the Laurel Park Action Network, and I have the privilege of living, I won't give you my address, but I have the privilege of living in our wonderful Laurel Park neighborhood. I'm speaking tonight in support of the Public Safety Commission's use of force policy recommendation, and I'm also speaking on behalf of the other members of the Laurel Park Action Network. Our group had the honor of participating in the thoughtful, village-led process that resulted in these recommendations. Thank you to Mayor Van Duzen, Police Chief Brian Baker, all the members of the Public Safety Commission and the Human Relations Commission, and especially to Ann Tennis, who skillfully facilitated the months-long process. Watching the news across the country in the past year, I have been deeply, deeply troubled that the killing and maiming of unarmed citizens, disproportionately Black and other persons of color, continues unabated despite the national spotlight on the problem. I understand that gun violence is out of control and that policing is a dangerous profession, but police killings due to mistakes or simply due to cruelty is unacceptable. Officers need to be trained to slow down their reactions and more accurately assess situations and to recognize any implicit bias. Bad apples need to be screened out. I'm grateful to be a resident of our caring and progressive Skokie community and to also have a police department that continues to evaluate and improve its policies and procedures. We remain an example to be modeled by other communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maggie Vandermeer. I just wanted to ask a quick question of clarification. Will there be an opportunity for public comment at the end as well, or just now?
Just now.
Okay. I want to begin by thanking the Public Safety Commission for the recommendations presented tonight. I appreciate your willingness to implement many of Skokie United's recommendations, to name systemic racism, to declare a commitment to equity, to recognize the need for diversity in the Commission and Community Review Board, and to request greater accountability and transparency. Thank you for listening to the community and for all of your additional research and work. As this year's use of force review comes to a close, it's a perfect time to step back, widen our lens, and look at how many of the concerns relating to use of force have deeper sources and bigger implications. For example, there are hints throughout the recommendations suggesting the Commission recognizes that community care and resources are foundational to true safety. I hope this will mean much more collaboration with and funding of health and human services to tackle the root causes of violence and crime. The use of force review process also brought to light arrest data from the Skokie Police Department, disaggregated by race, age, and gender. What we learned from this data is that Black residents make up only 6% of our population, but account for 45% of arrests involving use of force. In other words, Skokie is not uniquely immune to systemic racism. However, there was a very strong narrative throughout many Public Safety Commission meetings that insisted upon Skokie's exceptionalism and supposed distance from the events in Minneapolis and elsewhere. In fact, it scared me a little how that irrefutable data about disproportionate arrests of Black people in Skokie almost got completely buried, but for the insistence of a couple commissioners that it be addressed. The bigger implication in learning here is that we absolutely must have the data. The data tells the truth, despite what we may believe or aspire to. We cannot be afraid of that truth. In fact, we must seek it out and make it public. We must continue to do so because this is how we measure change and rebuild trust. This village has on many occasions officially acknowledged the presence of systemic racism. Now we are saying we want to scrutinize ourselves through an equity lens. So let's do that, openly, courageously, and humbly. To that end, I would also strongly encourage you to discuss the hiring of an equity officer or equity team to address systemic racism, not only in our police department, but throughout our village institutions. For example, if we begin to invest more in community care, we need to make sure that is being done through an equity lens. Another example is the recent rise in hate speech delivered verbally or through graffiti in Skokie. We need to be looking at how these attacks in our community are categorized by the police, but also insist that every instance be reported to the village and that a strong statement be issued to the community, making it clear that racism, anti-Semitism, anti-gay slurs, and so on will not be tolerated in Skokie.
Okay, Ms. Vandermeer?
Okay, thanks.
I'm sorry.
Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Slunga-Gadsden. And I just wanted to thank the village and the mayor for the review of the use of force policy, the recommendations of the committee of implicit bias training, and I also appreciate the language about continued dialogue with various stakeholders. I live in the Fairview South community, District 72. I'm also here to represent Abolition Coalition. Monique Cooley-Hicks, Natasha Lavalis, Roxanne Salgado, Jasmine Sabagala, and myself. I'm here really to talk about a few things, particularly the hate crimes that Ms. Vandermeer mentioned as well. The uncategorization of hate crimes have taken place here in Skokie. What history has shown us is that when it comes to actualization of American ideals and democracy, families that have been historically excluded from equal protection of the law are those that are Black, Asian, Latinx, and the LGBTQIA backgrounds. And I would like to ask for the fulfillment of those laws here, the assurance of that freedom and protection of our families. And I thank you in advance for your leadership in these areas. We also shared a statement, Jasmine shared a statement at the last village meeting, and we have not heard yet back concerning what she shared, and it was along the same lines of the review of the policies and the categorization of hate crimes. So the second time we're sharing, but I'm gonna speak a little bit more specifically. I'm a mother, a wife, community member, educator, organizer, and a woman of Asian Indian descent. I have African American heritage in my family, as well as extended family of white, Asian, and Latinx members. And I find the uncategorization of hate crimes problematic, concerning, and a boulder in the way of racial justice and equal protection for many reasons. I'm going to list a few here. Hateful language and racist epithets create an ethos of hate and antagonism in our community and affirm anti-Blackness and white supremacy. They specifically target marginalized members of communities and must be denounced publicly by all leaders, the Village of Skokie and the Skokie Police Department. The lack of identification of a hate crime by the Skokie Police Department impacts all who see it, and it leaves room for racist acts to continue in our community. It emboldens white supremacists, and it leaves BIPOC families and LGBTQI families with lack of formal protection by law enforcement. The lack of local categorization is also concerning because it also may leave our community without state and federal intervention, which is historically proven to be what has changed communities historically into equitable places. Also concerning systemic racism plaguing suburbs of who gets to own land and property. If hate crimes are only defined by those who are property owners, that means that that hate crimes and racist acts will not be categorized as such, because that means that you must own property in order to claim it being a hate crime. If a swastika was drawn on a property of an Asian, Black, or Latinx property member, I feel that that's a hate crime, regardless of the property owner being of Jewish ancestry, because I am against white supremacy and neo-Nazi philosophy. And I believe that should be treated as such, regardless, again, of the racial, ethnic, gender, sexual orientation, or religious affiliation of the property owner. For example, if the N-word is put on a home of a family that is Asian, I believe that is still a form of aggression and should be categorized as anti-Blackness and contempt. What protection is there for Black families, just even in the ethos of the community? And how is this being dismantled at the village level? I don't believe that just Black families are triggered by the N-word. I believe that categorically and unequivocally everyone would denounce that. And so that equal protection needs to be reflected in the way we interpret these graffiti and hate crimes. Leadership is important. I get to work at a school where equity and inclusion sets the tone for all the departments that follow. And I believe that even where I am, the superintendent did not classify the hate crimes and graffiti that happened to families that way, because they were looking for the leadership of the Skokie Police Department. And so if the Skokie Police Department and the village interpret the law in a certain way to protect these from happening, then I believe schools will follow suit too. Just like Ms. Vandermeer shared, that Black residents make up a disproportionate amount of arrests in the community, I believe that they should make up a proportionate amount of protection in the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Roxanne Salgado. I'm also part of Abolition Coalition. What I have to say is very similar to what Angela just said, but I want to make it more personal so that you really make sure you understand how I feel. I'm a Skokie resident. I've been here for 11 years now. I moved into the Fairview community 4 years ago. Unfortunately, the signs that are out, Skokie welcomes everyone, it does not apply to my family based on the hate crimes that have occurred in the Fairview community and the response or lack of response, really, of Skokie Police Department as well as District 72. As Angela mentioned, because those crimes were not categorized as hate crimes, there was no communication to the families. We heard it through the grapevine, and unfortunately, as a parent to Black children, I have a multiracial family. I'm Chicana, my husband's Black. My children, therefore, are Black. I've had to sit down and talk to them what the N-word means, what KK means, and just be really honest with them. We live in a community where there are white supremacists and racists. You need to be aware of that. You need to understand the language. You need to understand when you are being verbally abused and threatened. If you feel threatened, you need to tell us. Talking to District 72 was disappointing because their response was Skokie Police Department didn't categorize it as a hate crime, therefore there's nothing they can do about it. So I think it's important to understand the village's role, partnering with Skokie Police Department as well as community members to really make Skokie a welcoming place for all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Brodian, and I have lived in Skokie for 8 years. I'm glad to see that the Public Safety Commission's report includes an intention to examine public safety policies through an equity lens. I'm deeply concerned about the huge racial disparities in rates of arrest and use of force in Skokie, particularly against Black people. According to Skokie's website, 6% of Skokie residents are Black and 56% are white. But from 2015 to 2020, Skokie police made even more arrests of Black people than white people. And 45% of arrests with use of force were of Black people. That means that a Black person in Skokie is 9 times more likely to be arrested than a white person. This data is evidence of a crisis of systemic racism in Skokie policing that must be addressed without delay. To be clear, I'm not accusing Skokie police officers individually of racist intent. But despite the best of intentions, if we do not make significant changes to our systems that were built upon a foundation of white supremacy, we will continue to enact racist harm. The fact that Skokie police officers have participated in annual trainings on non-discriminatory policing practices, but the racial disparities continue to be enormous, is evidence that training individual officers is not the key to ending discriminatory policing. This fact is borne out by a recent study of the NYPD, which found that implicit bias training had no actual effect on racial disparities in policing. Addressing systemic racism requires far more than training individuals. It requires systemic changes to the policies and material realities that over-police and criminalize Black and brown people. The intention to work for equity is an important first step, and I urge you to please take the next steps and act on that intention. To that end, please prioritize the voices of marginalized groups, particularly Black residents who have been impacted by the criminal legal system, and how to work towards equity. Second, please create at least one paid position within the village for one or more equity officers to lead the village's equity work. It takes a team with the appropriate expertise, authority, and resources to be able to address inequities effectively. Third, please select members for the new Community Review Board who are experienced in equity work, trauma, mental health, and substance use disorders. And finally, please work towards greater accountability for addressing racial disparities in policing. Please set specific, measurable outcomes to reduce racial disparities with expected timelines and accountability for achieving those outcomes. I raise these issues because of my love for our community. I want Skokie to be the welcoming place that our signs say it is, that we aspire to be, and I want us to create real justice and safety for all. The village provides incredible, innovative services and facilities that enrich the lives of my family and neighbors, and it is my sincere hope that you will apply that spirit of innovation and that pursuit of excellence to lean into this challenge with courage, creativity, and commitment to true equity and community safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shireen Lanoy. I'm a resident of Skokie, and I live in the Fairview South community. I'm also a board member at Fairview South District 72. I really appreciate all the time and effort that's been put forth in coming up with a plan to help improve the SPD training and processes. There was mention of implicit bias training, and that if the village trustees would consider including some of the leaders in the education in the school districts to identify which types of implicit bias training are good, not just, I mean, maybe there are multiple ways to look at it, but I think getting their feedback and pulling them into the discussion and conversation around what type of implicit bias training should be implemented would be great. I think everything comes full circle. Our children, start out in the schools, and I had a wonderful meeting with some people today, and we discussed how, hatred and racism begins in the home, and then that's brought to school, and then into our communities, and then into our lives, et cetera. So if we can help not just our Skokie PD, but our teachers and as well, and educators, embrace the implicit bias training and bring that to the school, I think that'll help. It may be one facet in terms of helping break down some of the systemic racism that we see today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Molly Greening. I'm a resident of Skokie, and I'm also trained as a narrative ethicist. And as an ethicist and a narrative ethicist, we're always asking these questions about which stories are we telling, and why, and how does that relate to our history? And the one question I have, just from listening to this excellent review, is about when is deadly force justified? That seemed to come up multiple times in the 8 Can't Wait policies. And in a country that has been built off of systemic racism, I think it's really, really important to ask this question of when is deadly force justified. And so it seems there's lots with the appellate courts, there's some laws, but I think it ends up going to the Corporations Council to be making some of the teeth for these policies. And I just want people to really take the seriousness of that. When is deadly force justified? The reason we're even having this conversation is because oftentimes people have been brought to death and it's been argued as justified. And I want Skokie to be a place where we never have to justify deadly force like that. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to share any comments? If not, I'm going to go around with the board one more time. This time we'll go in reverse order. Trustee Klein.
Mr. Rizzo, I'd like to ask you one question, if you don't mind. When I read all this, and you went over this about the duty to intervene.
Yes.
Would you expound on that?
Sure.
Exactly what it means?
And I may defer to Chief Baker if that's okay, but I can give you my interpretation of it, and if there's anything to add, certainly would welcome Chief Baker here. But the duty to intervene is, in essence, a police officer's duty to intervene in helping another human being or individual in a situation of need. And so the rules and regulations do have language that require Skokie Police Department officers to intervene, so it is their duty. Our recommendation was simply to take that language and include it or reference it in the use of force policy. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay.
I had in my mind, I had a definition of the term, and that's a policeman's job, is to intervene. So.
I don't know if there's anything else, Chief Baker, you want to add?
I think you did a great job. Really, we do have a rule in the Police Department Rule Book that does require officers to intervene if they are witness to any other officer applying force that they believe is not justified under the law, as well as other interventions that may be necessary that they don't think are moral or ethical. But we have that rule, and part of the process with the Public Safety Commission brought out that all things related to the use of force should be transparent and in one policy. So we're going to reference that rule in our use of force policy. So it's kind of all in one spot.
Thanks, Chief.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
Trustee Pure Slovan?
Clarification, Mayor, am I allowed to ask a question directly of the chief?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Still new, guys. Thank you for the report. I heard repeatedly this evening about statistics about arrests and the disparity of the percentage of people of color who've been arrested. I think it was 46%, was it, of arrest? What I didn't hear was, of the 46%, how many were residents and how many were outside of the Skokie?
So you're challenging my recall. So I may not be exactly correct, but
Approximately.
Approximately, out of all of our arrests on an annual basis, around 80-some. Well, there's a couple factors at play, I believe, in those numbers. One is self-initiated arrests versus arrests that we're called upon. So if someone robs you of your money and you call the police and you call 911 and you tell us who did it, we have no control and no impact over who that individual is, right? So approximately 80% of our arrests, we are called to and told by other people who committed them. The other 20% are self-initiated. So that certainly has some impact on those numbers. The other one is as you mentioned, residents. I believe the number of people that commit arrests on an annual basis that are residents are around 30%.
So would it be safe to say that most of the arrests that are done in Skokie are initiated by someone calling 911, and B, that we are arresting people who are not necessarily residents of Skokie, but maybe coming to Skokie to commit a crime?
That's true, yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a follow-up? We got that number thrown at us today. Somebody said 45%. Is that accurate?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Johnson.
I'm not sure what else I have to say other than I appreciate that so many of the folks that spoke brought up this data that was presented during the course of the commission's review. I think it's important to name this data. This data is hard to deal with, but I think, as a lot of the speakers said tonight, it's always easier to deal with issues when we name them. I heard this in some of the comments about hate crimes as well. I'm hopeful that the Community Review Board is as proactive about dealing with these statistics as the Commission certainly hopes it will be. That's the sense that I got from the Commission. Yeah, I think that's all my comments.
Mayor?
No questions.
Mayor, the data that's being referenced tonight is all posted on the Public Safety Commission's, there's a specific sub-page to the Public Safety
Right.
Commission webpage, and it's all posted there.
Thank you. Trustee Kuhn.
So one thing I want to address is that the reason why we are here and having this discussion to begin with is that there has been trauma inflicted within our communities, right? It's happened on a national level. Our children have seen it and viewed it publicly. Families have had to have conversations about it with their children. This is very personal for many residents in our community. And I look forward to the continued community input that will be involved with the Community Review Board. But I just want to call out that we're having this conversation because there's been trauma in our lives over the past year because of what we've seen publicly in the national debate and the conversation. And we hope that Skokie can be a model for what that can look like to have a truly welcoming and safe community. Even the comment and feedback about making sure that the community residents who are sitting on the Community Review Board are those who are experiencing equity and trauma. It has to be driven by lived experiences for it to be effective. And I hope that the same energy and passion and the commitment that the individuals involved who have been a part of the Public Safety Commission continue to bring forth that energy to the Community Review Board, as we as a community need to work together as partners and figure out how do residents and policyholders or policymakers are able to work as true partners in the community and solve for this so that a year from now or 2 years from now, we can come back and actually be able to report back on some real numbers in terms of were we effective or not. And if we're not effective, let's revisit that and figure out what we need to do to move that inch or, move that needle in the direction that we want to, so that is a more fair and equitable place in practice as well.
Trustee Robinson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. First, I just wanted to thank all of those who spoke. especially, Ms. Salgado, for your personal story. I thought that really resonated with me, especially, and I'm sure many more people in our community. Ms. Greenwald, thank you for, sorry if I mispronounced your name, but I appreciate you bringing this whole notion of unless the use of deadly force is justified, which to so many people can be super subjective. So what does that really mean? Because as you mentioned, most of the things that have happened, someone saw justification on how they responded. I love this notion of continuing to use data and appreciate that to inform our decisions, to bring what's in the dark to light, for lack of a better term. And I also appreciate the training, the implicit bias training. I also know that hurt people hurt people. So I'm hoping that there are other socio-emotional pieces that are put in place to support our law enforcement on that level. Community Review Board, I 100% support the notion of it being a very diverse group that reflects our community all the way around. And, I just want us to be mindful and appreciate what Trustee Coons said about not having another national tragedy force us to examine our local processes. So I'll keep pushing my colleagues and the community to hold us responsible, so we're not waiting for the next horrible thing to act. So thank you.
Trustee Sucker.
Now I get to say that all the other trustees said what I was going to say, but I'm going to say them anyway. So as a social worker, I want to reiterate that I want us to look at everything through a trauma-informed lens, because that is where a lot of this is coming from. So thank you all for saying that. I do think it's important that the trainings, I heard it over and over again, even at our own meetings, about, making sure that the implicit bias trainings are good trainings, ones that are recommended and that will do what we're hoping for. I heard loud and clear that when our corporation counsel writes the ordinances, that we be careful about the language we use and how we define things. And yes, data, we heard that over and over and over again at our commission meetings, and are being transparent by putting them on the website, and will continue to do so. So I think that's a really important piece that came out of all this as well. And as far as the diverse review board, that also was a big discussion among the commissioners. That's why the last meeting, as Trustee Johnson said, was all about how to do that. They listened to the comments. They spent lots of time deciding geographics, how to get everybody, as many people as we could, to be part of the review board in a fair and equitable way. So that was one of my favorite meetings, because the process was really well done. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And did you or any of the commissioners have any concluding comments?
I don't. I'll defer if any of the commissioners do, other than to just express again
Okay.
gratitude to the village board and to the community.
Okay, we do have a vote today. We have a motion on the floor. Some may remember that we did have a motion. I have a couple points I want to make. First, I can't express my thanks. When we envisioned this last year, in the wake of the dramatic and hurtful events of the last summer, I was hopeful that we would get to a point where we are today, but I wasn't sure if this kind of process in the midst of a pandemic was even possible. You proved not only it was possible, but that it can be effective and that it can bring together the community. So I want to thank the chairman, our vice chairman, all of the members of the commission for your thoughtful comment in your report. It will be our guide as we go forward. This is not the end. Maybe it's the middle. It is not the end for certain. We have a long journey before us, but with our police chief, with our Public Safety Commission, our Human Relations Commission, and the involvement of the community, we are going to get there. This is a good community. It's a community that has always felt very clearly, very positively, no member of our community should ever, ever, ever feel unsafe, unwanted, or not wanted to be in this community. We reject white supremacy. We reject all of the evils that have come throughout history, but most recently here in our country, and even in parts as it was related in our own community. We reject white racism. We reject white supremacy. On the hate laws, we have to take the state law. If I believe that a lot of what you're saying is very accurate. What some people have done has been hateful and it has been hurtful. But under state law, that doesn't mean it is a hate crime. If you want to have some of the instances that you have mentioned, which are so hurtful and so hateful, made appropriate as a hate crime, talk to your state legislatures. They're the ones who enact state law. We are governed by state law. So there are many instances where our hands are simply tied. That is unfortunate, but that does not mean that we cannot do things on our own. And that is what we are going to do. You don't have just my commitment. You have the commitment of the entire board. You heard the board this evening, both before and both after the public comments. And so with that, I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Aye.
Trustee Pure Slovan,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Mayor Mendez.
Aye, the motion passes. The village board accepts the recommendation of the Public Safety Commission unanimously. Thank you. Under normal circumstances, I would take a 5-minute break, but I don't think it's even going to take us 5 minutes. The next item on the agenda is report of our village manager, John Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mayor Van Duzen and Village Board. Good evening, everyone. Items A, B, and C of my report this evening were approved under tonight's consent agenda, and that completes my report.
Thank you. Next is report of our corporation counsel, Michael Lorge.
I don't know, Mayor, I might take that as a challenge to see if I can stretch this out. Thank you, Mayor, trustees. Good evening, everyone. Items A and B in my report were approved as part of the consent agenda at the beginning of this evening's meeting. I will add, though, that the Corporation Counsel's office looks forward to not just codifying the parts and recommendations of the Public Safety Commission's use of force recommendations, but to amplify the principles and the intentionality of its vision and its guidance. I promise you that. That would conclude my report.
Thank you. We took up the Planned Commission alley vacation already. Concluding item is public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board on that item other than what we've already taken up this evening? If not, trustee Sutker.
I move we adjourn.
We are adjourned.
Mayor,
Oh,
I should mention that Matt Timken did supply a resident comment during the meeting.
oh, okay. It will be made a part of the record.